Well, I frankly don't think your signals are mixed. The American position is one that's complex and hard for ordinary viewers to understand. On the one hand, we do not take a position on the ultimate disposition of the sovereignty of the islands. On the other hand, Japan is the administrator, and the U.S. has a treaty obligation to protect the administrator, Japan, wherever it administers islands, even if they're controversially unassigned in terms of final sovereignty. The issue here is really to get past this point of exchanging strong public positions and have diplomats sit down and try to work out practical solutions to this problem. We had peace on this issue for 35 years because in the days of Deng and Tanaka and subsequent leaders, they were wise enough to put the differences off and to find practical means to allow the two sides to continue to maintain these ambiguities, which are a necessary part of the legacy of the World War II period. And now it's time for all of us to stop making strong public statements and to dispatch diplomats to work out practical solutions.
Mr. Powell, as a very senior China hand, you must be aware of the strong nationalist sentiments back here in China, and you know clearly that PLA and the new leadership in Beijing would have no room for maneuvers given our deep-rooted historical contradictions and the conflict with Tokyo, which colonialized Beijing, China twice after the Qing, after the battles of defeating Qing dynasty as well as the Manchurian War. But let me cross over to Victor. What do you think of, say, the commitment by Washington to defend the Diaoyu Islands, despite the heavy, absolutely unthinkable heavy economic loss that will be incurred by all players in the game?
No, well, I think even though what Secretary Clinton said when she met with a Japanese visiting Japanese foreign minister was considered very unfriendly by China, she also, in her remarks, appealed to China and Japan to use peaceful means to resolve their disputes over Diaoyu Island. That means there is a dispute between China and Japan over the Diaoyu Island. Now, what China is asking for is a very simple thing. That is, Japan recognizes the territorial dispute between China and Japan over Diaoyu Island and come back to the negotiating table, use peaceful means to sort it out, to overcome. Now, Japan has been stubborn and persistent in refusing to even acknowledge the existence of a territorial dispute between China and Japan over Diaoyu Island. That is, indulging in fantasies. Everyone in the whole world knows China and Japan have a dispute over Diaoyu Island, and Tokyo is burying its head in the sand for refusing to recognize the truth. Therefore, I think the United States will better serve itself as well as its own allies throughout the world and all the other nations in the world by urging Japan to recognize the existence of a territorial dispute between China and Japan, and urge the Japanese to come back to the negotiating table with the Chinese.
That's exactly the next talking point, the next question for Mr. Powell. Hello. China has benefited enormously from the first decade of strategic opportunities since we entered into the WTO, and we do not want to lose yet another decade of strategic opportunity in Chinese 战略机遇. That's why, Mr. Powell, China stands ready to find a peaceful solution to the current standoff over Diaoyu Islands. Now, don't you think it is the Japanese side which should take the blame by refusing to negotiate about what China calls the long existing disputes over the sovereignty of Diaoyu Islands? What do you think?
Well, I do know that earlier in the past year, one Japanese official said there was no dispute, and I would point out that somewhat later, the foreign minister of Japan under the previous government acknowledged that if there are parties that disagree with Japan's belief that it holds sovereign control of the islands, they should take that dispute to the International Court of Justice. Now, irrespective of whether China wants to go to the Court of Justice or not, what Foreign Minister Gemba was saying was he acknowledged there is a dispute. Moreover, the American position in saying that we take no position on ultimate disposition of the sovereignty of the islands is itself a admission that there is a dispute. So I think that this has been puffed up in Chinese media into something that says the Japanese have no acknowledgement of possible dispute. China, when it takes a position on territory, always says that it has an indisputable claim to the territory. But you have to allow that others may dispute that even if you disagree with them. And I think that's where we need to go to find a diplomatic solution, to stand down from the exchanges of rhetoric and begin to work out practical solutions to a modus vivendi with respect to the island.
Well, Mr. Powell, all those who have followed the development over Diaoyu Islands acknowledge that the U.S. plays a crucial role in stabilizing the situation. However, given the bombing of the Chinese embassy, the first Gulf War in 1991, and you can raise similar examples to illustrate that when China feels the U.S. is lurking behind, then China will have to maintain its military build-up. And therefore, I wonder if you are clearly aware of the military and the political fallout of the current standoff between Japan and China. Now, that gives China the ammunition for its military build-up, and that will fundamentally not serve the U.S. national interest. I mean, if you keep this in mind, do you think the current remarks by Secretary Clinton will be helpful and conducive to solving the dilemma of a trust deficit between Washington and Beijing?
I think if you take together the visits of 3 high-level officials to Japan last week, who delivered a message of calm and holding back from further escalation of the difficulties, together with Mrs. Clinton's reassurance that the treaty is still healthy, it provides a stabilizing pair of initiatives in an effort to create an atmosphere in which Japan does not feel that its vital interests are being sacrificed on this issue by its principal ally, and then can proceed with confidence toward a more constructive approach to the islands. What they need is from China an equally constructive approach. And we're not there yet. I hope through the dispatch of Mr. Yamaguchi, the coalition partner of Prime Minister Abe to China, with a letter from Abe, the various efforts that have been made to calm the situation down, that the